Hey everyone, Selwyn here from WynnStrength.com. On this video, I'm bringing you the second half of the third day of the new template. So we're actually hitting into the second giant set for today, and it's basically just some SSB squats, some stiff leg deadlifts, and some pull-ups. The main movement for today was squats, the main movement for today were the deadlifts. So in that case, we did some deadlifts, we did some post-activation potentiation theory training. You can listen about that in my previous video with some kettlebell swings, and then we added in some ab movements with a hanging leg raise. So you notice for the second part of this, it's like a hybrid between squat and deadlift accessory lifts. So obviously we have the squats with the SS yoke, and then some stiff leg deadlifts, followed with some pull-ups. Pull-ups are just kind of there to get some volume into the back. Kind of a deadlift accessory movement if you look at it that way. We're working with the fat grip pull-up bar today, so things like that. I just want to talk about why I decided to do these two as the accessory movements for today, whereas there's a lot of hundreds of other variations of different movements you could do for accessories for the squat and the deadlift. If you have access to an SS yoke bar, I'm a big fan of it. I do like how it's very similar to a front squat. If you don't have the SS yoke or a safety squat bar, do a front squat instead. And if you don't have the shoulder mobility, check out some videos about how I use my lifting straps to help get into that front rack position there. But if you do have the SSB squat equipment available, I would highly recommend doing that, mainly because it does help with helping you practice getting out of a bad situation. So with the camber of the bar, you'll notice that obviously the weights, not only are there handles, but there's also the weight is cambered in front of you. So rather than the weight being in line with the center of the foot, the weight is actually going to be in forward, and it's going to be pulling you forward. So it almost emulates as if you were to get into a bad squat where your hips rise first and your torso is still at a bad angle. This kind of trains you to be able to push through that and drive through that bad sticking point. Much like a front squat teaches you to stay more upright, this should teach you to drive the back angle higher in order to stop from driving yourself forward and face planting it. That's why I quite enjoy it. It does help also if you do have shoulder issues, which is something I have been dealing with recently. I've had to alter my training in the last couple of weeks there just due to some shoulder pain in the bench press. So this does help without having to get into a full squat position. Obviously the front squat is a different story altogether, but if you wanted to have weight on your back, this is a great way to get around that because your arms are in front of you, everything's locked in tight, and you don't have to worry about driving that shoulder up and having your shoulder in an odd angle and aggravating any bicep or shoulder tendon issues. So that's a good thing to do with the SS squat bar. I do like it as a squat variation for those two reasons, just because it does help. It also does shifting that weight forward, much like a front squat does. It will help activate a bit more quads. So that's a great thing there. And kind of keeping that bodybuilding mindset in mind for the accessory movements. We're isolating somewhat the abs and the quads in this movement, and then we're isolating the hamstrings and posterior chain with this movement. So obviously the stiff leg deadlift is a deadlift variation. If I did have access to another squat rack or another leg machine in my gym, I'd probably do two squat accessory movements, but being that isn't the case, I do one deadlift and one squat accessory movements on those deadlift squat accessory days. So it's a good way to alternate between the two, kind of train two different opposing muscle groups at the same time, get that somewhat like a bicep tricep superset. So the reason I like the stiff legged deadlift is it does target a little bit more of the hamstrings, and you get it just feels nice as a movement. You get a bit more of a nice stretch at the bottom. You're really wanting to keep the legs as stiff as possible, not locked out, because you don't want to obviously lock those knees into position. You want to keep them kind of loose. And just you want to come down with as much flexibility as allows and bend the knee forward. It's very similar to a Romanian deadlift, except with a stiff leg deadlift, you are wanting to touch the ground at each rep. I do like it because it does teach you to maintain that tension. We are flipping the rep set scheme, as you'll see. We did 8x3s for the heavy deadlifts. Now we're doing 3x8s for the volume work. Driving up some more of those tonnage numbers without having to increase the intensity too much, because 8x3s is very grueling. It's quite a workout. So with that in mind, we are keeping the weights relatively light, keeping the breaks relatively short, and keeping the reps relatively high. So that's how I like to treat my accessory movements. Hopefully this helps you in how you want to plan out your training programs or try and plan out your own templates. So this has been Selwyn from WynnStrength, and remember, better life through strength.